Morning, everybody. So, if you've been paying attention to stocks, you know that yesterday the stock market went up significantly, like 1.5%. So, we often talk about this hypothetical investment portfolio that you should be striving for as a new owner operator. So, let's say you get your investment portfolio up to $100,000. 1.5% is $1,500. One day your net worth increased by $1,500 without even driving. So this is kind of like boom shakalaka, right? It's like, this is great. This is what you want as an investor. Um, Being an owner operator, yeah, you got to make profit. Okay, you're gonna make profit, and we talked about a lot of strategies about, whether you should pay off debt or whether you should save that money and invest it. But it's part of the game. The game is, you're going to haul loads. You're a small business owner. You're going to make profit. And it's like, what do you do with that profit? What do you do with that money? You could do a lot of things. You could spend it, you can pay off debt, or you can invest it. And I recommend you invest it and grow your money. So, like yesterday, if you had that money invested, you're already in the market. You're not waiting on the sidelines. You got to be in the game in order to win the game. So if you already had that money invested, days like yesterday come along and boom, boom, went up 1.5%. And that's going to continue. All right, area. We're in Georgia. So we'll move around here a little bit, see if we can get a better signal. So a lot of the things that have developed with the Trump administration haven't even kicked in yet. The Trump tax cuts, the tariff revenue is starting to come in. All this additional spending from foreign countries into the U.S. for manufacturing, that hasn't even kicked in yet. So when that kicks in, the stock market's going to continue to go higher. So this got to be in order to. If you're trying to time the market, then you miss the boat. Because you can never accurately predict when the market's going to jump up like it did. You're sitting there on the sidelines with your money, waiting to buy, and the opportunity never came. Instead, the market keeps going higher, and you're missing the boat. So there are plenty of different strategies, but time in the market is the best strategy. You have to be in the game in order to win it. If you're sitting on the sidelines, you're not even playing the game. So you gotta put some money to work. Now, it's often good advice to keep some money on the sidelines. That's kind of like keeping your gunpowder dry. So yeah, you got to put some money to work, and you got to keep some money on the side. So the money on the side could be used for maintenance, or it could be used for cash flow for your operations. You could easily have $10,000 or more on the sideline. But most of your money is going to be at work in the stock market. So this is the idea that your money is going to grow money. You're putting your money to work. See, as an owner operator, you want to play the game at a very high level. You got to develop your skills, and part of your skills is your money managing skills. You got to cut costs. I say that all the time. It's not what you make, it's what you keep. If you look at the profit, and say, okay, you're on a spot market, you're making $3 per mile, which these guys don't make, but let's just say you did. But your expenses, $2.25. Okay, you're making $3 per mile, but your expenses are $2.25 per mile. So your profit is only 75 cents per mile. Now, let's say, for example, you work at a carrier like I do at Crete Carrier, and your revenue is like closer to $2 per mile. Okay, but your expenses are only $1 per mile. So you're earning $1 per mile. So which one's more profitable, being on the spot market or being with at least on with a carrier? So you can't always say you want the most pay because you're not thinking about the profit margin. Yeah, you can make more money, but you're going to have more expenses. So it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And the money that you keep, what do you do with that money that you keep? I suggest that you invest it and grow your money. So if you are able to reach that $100,000 benchmark, and let's say your return on that investment is 20% for the year. 20% 100,000 is $20,000. Those are miles you didn't have to drive. So let's just say, for example, uh, you know, your net income after taxes as an owner operator is $80,000 for the year. After you pay for your truck and your fuel and your insurance and everything else, it probably would be 80,000. Could be 100,000. But you got that as your primary source, but you have a second, which is your investment. So you take that 80,000 that you earned from driving plus 20,000 from your investment, you made $100,000 that year. Or if you made $100,000 driving and you made another 20,000 from your investment, now you made $120,000 for the year. So you can grow your money. You could definitely grow your money. If you're earning $20,000 a year off your $100,000 investment, and then you're also able to contribute $2,000 per month additional investment. So every month you're going to put $2,000 into your portfolio. So over the course of the year, you put 24,000 in your portfolio, but your portfolio also grew by 20,000. So for the 1 year, your portfolio grew by $44,000. Within 2 years, you'll probably be at $200,000. See, once you reach that first 100,000, then compound interest kicks in, and your net worth is going to start climbing, not in a straight line, but in an exponential line, which means the rate of growth is going to accelerate. It may have taken you 5 years to reach $100,000 in your investment portfolio, but it will only take you 2 or 3 years to reach your second 100,000. After that, it keeps growing. So once you reach that $100,000 investment, could potentially only be like 10 years away from retiring as a millionaire, because that investment is going to grow. So this is the idea. You got to get your head in the game. This is the game. This is absolutely the game that owner operators are playing. You're thinking, as a new owner operator, as a potential owner operator, you're thinking about making more money, and you're thinking about how you're going to spend that money on your lifestyle. You're going to buy fancier cars or houses or pay off debt and things like that. Well, the experienced guys aren't playing that game. They're buying stocks. They're playing a whole different game at a different level. They're playing at a level that is, at the highest level. So yeah, they're driving miles, but they're cutting costs, they're saving their money, and they're buying stocks, and they're letting their investments boost their net worth. You often hear guys on spot market say, "Work smarter, not harder." Well, another way to do that is put your money to work. That's definitely smarter. That's smarter than anything. So it's the smartest way to become wealthy than any other thing you could do. You could change jobs, you could change professions, you can play the lottery, but the best way to become wealthy is invest your money long term. And you have to be in the market when the market turns upward, like it did yesterday. If you were waiting, you missed it. You missed the boat. If you wait on the sidelines, you are. Yeah, there's risk. There's risk in investing, but every time the market goes down, it always bounces back. I could look at the 2008 financial crisis. It went down. It bounced back. The pandemic. It went down. It bounced back. The day the tariffs were announced. It went down. It bounced back. And every time it bounces back, it goes to new higher levels. So, don't have this irrational fear about investing. This is money that you have designated to work for you. Now, it's not your emergency money. I mean, that the emergency money, you keep that on the sidelines. That could be $10,000 to $12,000. You need that for truck repairs and things like that. But I'm talking about your long-term investing strategy. If you want to pull yourself out of a low standard of living, if you want to pull yourself out of poverty, if you want to achieve middle class or even upper middle class, this is how you do it. You got to get in the game. I know I've talked to a lot of owner operators, a lot of new owner operators, and they're trying to figure out owner operator, which is fine. That's where it should be. But if you really have to be invested, years of investing, um, by delaying it. A lot of times I hear drivers give excuses. They're delaying. They're like, I have plans for that money. I can't invest it right now. Well, you are hurting yourself by not investing your money. You're like, well, I want to pay this off, and I want to, I want to think about another truck, this, that, and the other. And meanwhile, time is going by. And this is money that you could have put to work. The sooner you put that money to work, the higher your income is going to become. You waste 5 years waiting to invest. I mean, it's 5 years in the investing world is a long time. You could have been so much more better off had you started investing. So you got to get your head in the game. A lot of times, people say you got to get your head right. You got to get your head out of the clouds. You got to, be able to think clearly. You got to have some kind of direction. And yeah, buying your truck is a good first step. Becoming a new owner operator, that's great. You're running the miles, you're learning what it means to be an owner operator, you're making that money. Okay, which is fine. That's perfectly normal for a new owner operator. But what do you do with your profit? What do you do with that money? I'm suggesting that you put some of it to work. Make your money grow money. Make your money make money. The sooner you get involved in this, the better off you're going to be long term. The more you delay it, have your head in the game. So a lot of people say, bad things about being an operator, blah 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 blah. They don't know what they're talking about. If they don't have a truck, they have no clues what the hell they're talking about. The guys who are performing at the highest level as an owner operator are making profit, and they're saving that profit and they're investing it. They're growing their money. That's the game. That is the ultimate level of performance that you want to get at. It's not driving 130,000 miles for the year. It's not having a super truck that goes 75 miles per hour. It's not making $3 per mile. It's saving your money, managing costs, investing that money, and growing your money. You want to get your head in the game, you got to be in the game. You cannot win this game if you're sitting on the sidelines. All right, guys, I'll put some links in the description with Professor G and a couple other things that'll help you get started. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.